Many of you have asked me how I record my guitars, and more so how I get everything recorded in a full mix. I'm going to share my simple step-by-step process with you, and this is going to allow you not only to capture that riff that you wrote yesterday that you probably forgot today, because how many times has that happened, but you'll also have this in the full mix. I'll show you how you can expand on this riff to make a complete song, and this is going to give you something that not only you can have for yourself, but you can also share with other bandmates, or if you want to collaborate with others, or if you just want to put something out there with you playing in the full mix on your socials or even your YouTube channel. Oh, and if you're new to all this, you've never worked in a DAW before, you're not sure where to plug your guitar into for this, I've got a complete beginner's guide on the connections and setup. I have a link to that video in the description of this video. First, I'm going to show you how I set up my session and how I make everything super convenient. We'll go through the process here, but then after that, I'm going to show you an easy way not to have to go through this, even though this is easy. All right, so I'm going to click New. I'm in Studio One, PreSonus Studio One Pro, by the way. Most DAWs are relatively the same. You're going to open a new session however you do that in your DAW. So I click New. We can name the song here, name the file. Let's just call this Nu Metal. No, not that kind of nu metal, guys. You know what? Screw it. Let's just call it metal there. So, new session. The first thing I do is I go to track. Again, most DAWs are going to be relatively the same. Go to wherever you can add a track. I'll go here, add tracks. I named this Rhythm Guitar 1. Actually, I don't do all that. I just do like a RHY 1. Done. Now, before I go any further, if I'm going to be using a plugin like an amp sim for this track, I'll go ahead and load that first. I'll tell you why in a second, but let's just load something in here. We've got Bogren Digital's amp knob. Let's do their BDM 410 JVH. This is a pretty killer amp sim, by the way. So I've got that loaded into my track. The reason why I load that first is because I want to have two rhythm guitar tracks. I'll explain why when we get to that. But in this case, I can just go over to track 1, rhythm 1. Okay, we've got the plugin loaded into it. I am going to duplicate that track. Now I've got rhythm 2. It's cool. If you name it 1, it should name it 2 right after, right? So you can see if I double click on the track, we go here and my plugin, well, it's right there. My amp sim, it's in both tracks. This is just one of the tiny little things that you can do to make your process flow smoother. After I have my two rhythm tracks, I like to go ahead and add a lead guitar track. Now, what I'll do in this case is I'll just duplicate the track again. Check this out. We duplicate rhythm 2. We've got rhythm 3 now. However, I will change the name to lead because this is going to be for my guitar solos. And again, I've got the plugin right there. Now, if you didn't want to use that plugin, you want to use something completely different for your lead track, well, go down to your track there and you can go to inserts and just click remove all. Maybe I want to use another plugin. Let's see, we've got the Bogren Digital BDM 800 bad boy. We'll drag that into the track there for lead, and there we go. Real simple, real easy. Now, just two more tracks we want to add, so I'm going to go over here and add a bass guitar track. We'll call this bass, right? I'm going to go ahead and put my plugin here as well. In this case, we're using Bogren Digital's bass knob STD. I want the bass knob, but not the STD. After that, I'm going to add our drum track. Now, in this case, I am using virtual instruments. I'm using a drum program. I've got a couple programs that I use here. Sometimes I use Bogren Digital's Crim drums, which sound amazing. For this example here, though, I'm actually just going to use TuneTrack's Easy Drummer. Now, to add this track, you'll want to add what's called an instrument track, a virtual instrument track. And you could go to track and you can see, okay, add instrument track. But in the case of PreSonus Studio One, I can just go to the virtual instrument itself. Okay, I can go here and I can just drag it below the bass track or drag it wherever I want, and it will actually create that track for me. So those are my main tracks. We've got two rhythms, we've got one lead, we've got a bass, and we've got our drum set. Now, of course, you can add more tracks, or if you want to take off some tracks, you're free to do that, but this is just my typical process here for doing what we're doing. Now, before we record our first guitar track in the next step, there's actually a way to bypass everything we just did, and I think most DAWs have this feature. In this case, I can save this as a template. So we can just save it as, let's just call it the metal template, the metal T. How about that? Easy enough. So this way, when you go to record a new riff idea or start working on a song, well, you can just pull up that template and everything's there. Your drums, your plugins, everything is right there. Crap, forgot something. So we just recorded a riff. Now I'm actually going to delete that. Actually, let's do that right now. It is gone. Of course, I can always recall that. Again, most DAWs work the same. I can just do the Command Z on the good old Apple keyboard and poof, it's right there. And even so, well, I can go to my pool over here and I can always see whatever tracks that I've recorded. So as long as you don't delete those, I'm real bad about deleting stuff, by the way. But anyway, we're gonna remove this track for now. You see it's still in the pool there, so if I needed it's there, which I don't. But this is the creative process for me. So most of the time, I'm just jamming. I'm just writing riffs. That riff you just heard, I just wrote it on the fly right now for this session here. What I mostly do, and again, there's two methods. The other method I'll share in a second, but this first method here, I'll go ahead and pull up the drum program. So again, we're using Easy Drummer here. Now, a few quick tips with this program. This is TuneTrack Easy Drummer free. So I've got a couple different packs here. I'm not going to go into detail on this stuff, but I will go to my Metal Machine pack here. Pulls up some cool looking metal drums. I like these things. And I also have some additional loops that cater to our style of music, metal. So if I go over to the grooves here, you can see all the different grooves. I've got this black metal groove set here. I've got a death metal. And of course, I've got the Metal Machine grooves here. My personal opinion, and this just is how I do things, I don't program drums at all. I don't get into that stuff. I let a real drummer do their job if I'm going to release something professionally. You guys know Cameron Fleury has worked with me. We'll talk more about that at the end here when we give the additional steps if you want to truly release something and put it out there that's professional. But this is just kind of like the starting guide here. This is just to get your stuff down, get your ideas down so that you have it for yourself. You can build on them, continue writing. If you want to share it with your bandmates or something like that, or just put it out here on socials or YouTube or whatever. In any case, I will find a loop that kind of caters to the riff that I'm writing. So let's go through this real quick. I'm just going to turn my guitar track on. We're not recording anything right now, right? What did my riff sound like? All right, close enough. So two things I'll do real quick. Let me close this drum program out so I can see the BPM of my DAW. We can see it down here, tempo. Okay, I just want to share this with you real quick. That BPM, ballparking it here, probably maybe 171. I have no clue. But when I pull my drum machine back up, my drum program here, whatever I click on, like groove-wise, well, it's going to go off of that BPM. It's going to go off of that tempo. So death metal, now I happen to kind of memorize where some of the cool grooves are that I like a lot, and you just kind of, you get used to that. So this one here, let's go to, this one's called No Name, the chorus under my death metal pack here. I've got a star by it. I've already saved this one, you can see. So let's just click on this. I love double bass. I'm a sucker for double bass, so of course that's going to be one of my favorites. But let me decrease that just a little bit. I'm going to go back down to like 165. I can kind of hear it already. So let's just hear what that sounds like. Again, I'm not recording anything at this point. I'm just kind of getting a feel for the tempo and then the type of drum pattern I want. Now what I'll typically do is I'll take that loop, the loop that I like, okay, I like that one, and I'm not gonna go through all these other loops. This is not like a drum program session. Again, I don't program drums, I just use the loops. I might add a little kick and a cymbal at the very end, so that's about the extent of my drum programming here. I'll show you how I do that too. But in any case, that's one of the ways I write. And of course, if we want to extend, well, we'll get to that in a second. So the other method that I use sometimes is, let's say I don't have a riff. Well, I'll do the same thing, but I'll just kind of reverse the process. I'll pull up the drum machine, drum program, and let's just start out with a completely different tempo so I don't write the same riff. Let's do a tempo of like 141. I like odd numbers for some reason. So that's tempo. Let's just stay with the same loop here. It's just going to be a little bit slower. That's just to demonstrate that if I don't have a riff, if I don't have anything that I'm thinking about riff-wise, well, I'll just play around with the drum machine here. I keep calling it a drum machine because I'm still stuck in like the 90s where I was using the little pads to play drums with. Yeah, I used to do that. In any case, I'll play around with some of the loops to try to inspire riffs. Now, where it gets interesting is where we merge these two methods together, which we're going to talk about next. But before we do that, well, let's just lay down a track. So I'm going to change the BPM back to, crap, I don't remember what it was, guys. I think it was 165, right? Yeah, let's just go with it. So now I'm actually going to drag the drums, the drum loop, into the track so I have it set to record. How we do that is this is easier on a bigger screen. I've got like a 32-inch LG something or another. So I'll just kind of move this down here. I'm going to drag this loop into the track, but there's one thing that I want to show you first before I do that. And there's a very specific way I go about this. All right, so I hope you're taking notes, by the way. You can go back through this video as many times as you want. I've got timestamps in the description, all that good stuff. So what I do first, and this is applying this to Presonus Studio One. Again, all DAWs should work relatively the same. I set markers. So I'll go up here and I'll just set the marker. I think I already had one set, so I'm going to set it again. Okay, so you see my marker is start right here. Now, I don't want to start at 1. And here's why. Because if I start recording right now, well, before I can hit that first note, well, it's already going to be recording. And so if I put my drums in right there, well, that's just not going to work. So I will drag that start over to a little bit past, let's say before 4. So you see I've got it right on 4. I'm going to go back just a little bit. Okay. Now, my other marker, it doesn't really matter where that is. You've got a start and an end marker. You can set your other marker later. Like if the riff was just a few seconds long, let's say it went from where your 4 is right here to, let's say, 8. I know that's not what we're doing, but let's just pretend, okay? So I would just go to the plus sign where it says marker, click plus, and that's 2. So that means that's my start point and my end point. You do have an end point, but it's like way, way down, probably like 3 or 4 minutes into it, something like that. So I like my double bass groove here. They call them groove in tune track. I'm gonna drag this groove right here. Now I'm not gonna go to 4, and I'll show you why. I'm actually gonna drag it to where it starts at 5 here. See that right there? What I like to do is, let me close this part out. I'm going to double click. This is a very important step for you guys. There's another way you can do this, but this is a cooler way, in my opinion. Okay, I'm going to double click on this. All right. Now I'm going to go over here a little bit to where 4 starts. And let me just find like a symbol. There we go. Okay, on 4, 4.2, 4.3, 4.4. Okay, so guess what I just did? I just set my count off, which is pretty cool. Now, if you wanted to use the click track, you could do that. Okay, let's just go back. What's cool about recording these days is you can take the edge of the track like this and you can drag it. So I can get rid of the symbols without deleting them, right? So I can just drag this back. So let me turn on the click track, the little metronome here, click. So I could start like this if I wanted to as my count off. Okay, do you like that? Or would you rather here, let's turn the click track off, let's drag this back out. Would you rather start out to this? Okay, cool. Now, before you dump this down, if you wanted to cut that part out of the track, I mean, you could just drag it just like I did. You don't have to have it there, you know, and then move your start closer to where you're actually going to start playing, or where the guitars may slide in or something like that. But I just like to have that as like a count off. And if you're part of the Jason Stallworth Guitar Academy, when you go through my lessons and get the downloads, I always have these symbols as your count off, not a click track. So in any case, let's record our first guitar track here. Here we go. Now, if this is your first time doing this, you're going to be stoked. You're like, you just recorded your guitar track to a cool drum track. That's semi-cool. I know it's programmed drums, whatever, right? But this can be just a monumental moment for you because it opens up the gateway to all kind of riff ideas, and it really, I think it helps you become a better guitarist all around as well when you start writing and you start piecing things together, which we're going to do next. But I want to do a quick intermission and show you like what you can do right now when you're at this level right here. So first of all, I like to clean the tracks up a little bit. You see there's some dead space here, so you can take the edge of the track, and again, I assume most stalls work the same, just drag that right here. Okay, if you drag it too far, crap, I cut it off, well, just drag it back, not a big deal. And then I'll just go to the end here, and then I'll drag this back a little bit. The cool thing about using plugins, even if you had like some kind of delay, or whatever, or any kind of like reverb or ambience or effect, it'll still carry over even though you end the track here. So the actual guitar will stop. It'll still carry over just a little bit. So what I'm going to do is we're going to dump this down, going back to where we had our start, and we'll just use the count off too. We'll just add that in there, right? So let's go over here. Now, instead of going all the way over here, all the way over here, all the way over here, holy crap, this is like so far into it. The end point, which is, where's this thing at, man? Right here. So yeah, that's way out there. Instead of dragging that all the way down, and if you're doing a full song, like a 3 or 4 minute song, that's fine. You can move that around at this point. But I'll just go back, and of course I've already done it, where this little 2 is right here. Why is that important? Well, because we can go to song, we can go to export mix down, okay? And we can just call this cool metal riff edge, okay? Now I can select between markers, and it's already by default selected between these markers here, start and 2. Now if it was on, and you can see it's 16 seconds, right? Very short riff. If it was on like between each marker or between start end marker, you would see the time change. Yeah, that end marker is at like 3 minutes and 33 seconds. So again, we're going to go back to selected markers. We're going to do start between start and 2. That is going to dump down. Well, a little bit of clipping there. We can just adjust the volume and deal with that later, but there it is. Okay, there's your file, and I can just play it right here. So you can get your riff ideas with just a guitar track and the drum program if you want to do that. That's pretty cool. Let's pull up the drum machine, or drum program, okay? Let's pull up the drum program again here. So this time I want to find something else that's just different. I don't really care what it is so much, but so we're in the chorus just to keep things basic and simple. I'm gonna go to verse here, and I'm just gonna see, okay. So that obviously is different from, okay, cool. So if my initial riff was this right here, right? So I want something different. So I'll just play this loop here. And it doesn't have to be this loop, it could be any loop. Doesn't matter what loop it is, just something different. It's a different part of the song. Okay, again, I don't know if that'll work. I'm just making something up on the fly here. All right, so what I'll typically do is I'll go to my track. Now remember, at the end of that final piece, we added a little bit. So what I'll do is at the 13 mark, you can see how it goes over here. I'm just gonna drag this back, okay, a little bit. So that way, when I drag this new drum loop in, I'll put it up right next to that one. So as we end that prior riff, let's just go here. Let's just listen to the tail end of this. Okay, so that's where I'm going to record this next piece of music. A lot of times what I'll do is I'll actually get rid of what I recorded before so I can have just kind of a smooth, smooth transition here. Well, let's go back to the beginning here. Okay, let's record this. Okay, to be honest, that was a bit sloppy. Again, we're doing this on the fly, and part of why I'm not trying to perfect everything, because I will ultimately go back and perfect this. Actually, I might make a lesson out of this. Let me know if you want that, if you're part of the Jason Stallworth Guitar Academy. But in any case, so you don't have to get it perfect while you're writing. You can go back and redo this. In fact, maybe I didn't like some of the stuff I did at the end there. I think I actually played that different than what I played before. Let's just record that one more time, okay? Let me try to get a little bit cleaner than what I had before. Okay, that was a little bit better, added a little bit more dynamics to it. Now, going back, I might either change some of those parts up a little bit to sort of fit what I'm hearing with the grooves, or I might just look for a different groove pattern. It doesn't have to be exact. Again, this right here is mainly just for the idea, to get the idea across. Now, let's clean this up a little bit. I always like to drag these open spaces here. And as I'm scrolling, remember our second marker was here. So if we're dumping the song down, we don't want it to cut off there. So I'm going to go ahead and move this out some, okay? We'll move it out to about here. Now again, I can go ahead and add my ending part to the drums right here, but ideally, I wouldn't do that until I'm done with this riff. Now, if I'm making a lesson out of this, and hey, I'm just giving these two riffs as the lesson, yeah, I'll go ahead and double click on my drum track here. Let's go here. Let's, where's my kick at? There we go, right there. Okay, cool. Okay, so you can hear where that ends right there. So now I've got two pieces of the song. And what I will typically do is just continue building this out. Now, a lot of times if I'm writing a real song, right, that I want to really work on, well, I might extend some of these pieces out by just playing it twice. Okay, I might play that first riff, that initial riff. I might play that 2 times over, right, before changing to this other part of the song that we just recorded. But I just want to kind of give you an idea of how this process can flow for you, because now you can go back to your drum patterns here, right? You can scroll through here and find something else that's different. and let that inspire you to write something that's different, right? And then go back and record that guitar track again. Or you may have this entire thing in your head already. You may have been just jamming on something, right? And like, man, I've got the verse, chorus, intro, I've got the whole song mapped out on guitar. Well, at that point, it's just a matter of going through here and finding which grooves fit your riffs, fit each part of that song the best. In that case, and I'm not going to demonstrate it here because it would take too long, but in that case, what I would do is I would take that first drum loop, the drum loop that's probably the closest to the overall theme of the song, and I would just duplicate that across 3-4 minutes or whatever, just so I've got something steady. I'd record that entire guitar part. Okay, you've got your intro, verse, you've got all these parts memorized on guitar, so you just need to get it down. Okay, I'd record that entire song if that's what you have, or half the song, however much you have, and just extend that drum loop all the way across. Okay, and then you can go back and just start playing around with the drums at different parts of that song. It's like, okay, we've got double bass through the whole thing, but I know here I want something different, I want something different here. We'll take those loops out at those sections and replace them with something that fits a little bit better. I truly hope you're enjoying this so far, but this next part will change everything. And this is pretty much what I do for all my rhythm guitars and any full mix that you'll ever hear from me. So first things first, track 1, you'll see your panning option here. It's up the middle. I go ahead and pan that all the way over to the left, okay? Now, I've already got track 2 open, because remember, we set these up in the beginning, so I'm going to pan that one all the way to the right. So now, when you listen, you're going to have the first track over there. That's left, right? Yeah. And then the next track is going to be the other way. This is going to create such a cool mix. And the reason I do it right now as opposed to later is because I want to hear it like this in the studio. So of course you're not hearing the full version right now. Actually, you will, because I'm going to dump this down and I'll sync these two together so you can just hear it exactly how I'm about to play it here, how it turns out. Let's just come up with something. Now this is something you probably want to play around with a little bit, but I'm just going to wing it, guys. Here we go. Okay, I don't know how that turned out, but of course you just heard it. What I wanted to make the point of is that with this second guitar, a couple of different reasons why I do it this way. Okay, one, even if I were to play the exact same thing, you're going to have little nuances in between the two guitars. Now, if they're way off, you want to go back and re-record it. And that's just part of the process of writing your own music. You're learning your own song as you write it. So it's like, okay, well, I came up with this cool riff, this cool melody, this cool progression, but you're also learning it, right? You're learning how you want to shape that. And that will change as you go through this process. By the time I get to the end of this, that initial riff probably will change a little bit because I'll hear different things as I start adding drums and bass and a second guitar track. I'll hear different things like, maybe I want to do this instead. But even if I were to have the guitars, both guitars doing the exact same thing, which I do that in a lot of songs in certain parts, okay, it'll still have those little nuances. Now, you may ask, well, Jason, I just want the guitars doing the same thing, so why not either A, just record one guitar like we did earlier, or why not just like duplicate the track, and then pan them? Well, that doesn't do anything. That just increases the volume. That literally does nothing. Again, you want those little nuances between the guitars, between both performances. They're not going to be exactly perfect. That's a good thing, okay? It creates this liveliness. There's going to be these little, just slight little differences between those two tracks. And to the point you just heard, a lot of times I like for that second guitar to do something different. Maybe it's doing the same rhythm at first, but it branches off and does something completely different. And that just gives you more creative power to play around with that. And all of a sudden, that one riff that you came up with initially becomes this beautiful orchestration of metal guitars. Real quick, one thing I didn't share earlier is I like to mix things along the way. You can see my level, my master's already peaking over here. Typically what I do is I'll reduce some of these tracks, some of the levels, when I'm using Easy Drummer, that track I just leave at 0 dB, so my guitars are a little loud, so I'll either A, just record them with my level down, or I'll just reduce the track volume here, and I kind of know which plugins, kind of where they need to be. I can leave my interface volume the same, and I can kind of adjust the tracks, like individual levels here on the guitars, and this shouldn't give me any clipping here. Let's see. Okay, no clipping, we're good, but I just wanted to make the point of I like to try to mix along the way. I think people call that topside mixing because it just makes sense to do that. It sounds mixed as you're recording this. All right, now it's time to record the bass track here. Now, I typically plug my bass guitar into a separate input in my audio interface. You don't have to do that. You can plug it in the same input, but the reason why I do this, and this is why I prefer to have a multi-input interface, is because you can see on input 1, the volume is at a certain level. Well, that's the level I know I need it at when I'm using plugins or recording my guitar. But my experience with bass is it requires a little bit higher input level. So I set it at a different input level in the second input. So I just plug into that. This prevents me from having to go back and forth with volumes and that sort of thing. And it's just one of those little things where you can improve your workflow. You can smooth out the process and, well, it just makes everything smoother. One last note, no pun intended, well, the pun's always intended, but one last thing before you record your bass. So we're going into input 2. What that means on the interface, what that means in the DAW is you need to set that bass track to pick up input 2. So we're doing that right now. Otherwise, you're going to be recording like, hey, nothing's like, I don't hear anything, nothing's coming out, what's going on? Well, that's because you need to set that track to be in line with whatever input that instrument is going into. What this also would mean is you might want to save this template, update this template as it is now. And you can always do that along the way as you make changes. Now, before I record the lead guitar track, I'm actually going to change things up a little bit. I like the lead tone that comes from a specific amp pedal that I've been using. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the lead track in the studio, and I'm going to remove the plugin. Now, you can just turn the plugin off, but I'm just going to remove it because I'm actually going to pull another plugin in here. So removing the plugin we had for the amp sim, and I'm putting in a delay. So I'm using this little pedal right here, this Black Star dual distortion pedal with my noise gate. So I'm using that for my main sound, my distortion, my amp, if you will. And then I'm going to use the delay plugin in Studio One. And you may have caught this on my last video on lead guitar tone. I'll link to that in the description as well. But let's lay down a quick lead track. Let's wrap things up. And normally I don't solo through the entire song, but this is like a, 20-second song or something like that. 29 seconds. So in any case, we're going to tighten things up a bit. So the first thing I do is what I shared with you before. I'll kind of clean up the tracks a little bit. I'll drag the corners of the tracks, not the corners, but the entire track, just to prevent any kind of noise that might come over, especially with the pedal that I'm using. It's kind of noisy. So I'm just gonna clean these up a little bit, clean up all the other tracks here, button things up a little bit. Again, this is not for a professional release. This is just for, well, actually, what I'm doing right now is what you just heard in that mix just now with the lead. So I want to share with you the mixing and mastering process. Well, we're canceling out the mixing because remember, we do that top end. We sort of do that like along the way. And yeah, I'll go back and mess with some levels here and there. You can see we are clipping again over here. Let's click that. And I've got my lead cranked up a little bit. We started out with 0. But the point I want to make here though, and you can see I reduced the bass greatly. That had to come down a little bit. You have to play around with the levels, right? What's cool is as you do this more, you'll learn where those levels need to be for specific amp sims or amps and that sort of thing. And especially if you're using the same amp sims often, or you want to use a specific amp sim for a specific song. Well, hey, set this up, find out where the mix fits the best, and then use that as a template. So when you want to use those amp sims and that drum program with this bass plugin, maybe this lead amp, then you've already got that set in place. And of course, you'll continue to play around with the levels and mixing and such. Now, to button things up, you can use a mastering tool here on the main track. So I'm going over here and you see where it says post. I can just click here and I can go to mastering, and I've got all these presets for mastering. Now, obviously, I'm not releasing this as a professional song. This is just probably for YouTube. You'll probably see this on a lesson coming up soon. So let me know if you want that. Or if I just want to repurpose this for social media, or if I want to share it with somebody, or if I want to work on it later, I can do that. I'm like, hey, I kind of like this little riff, this thing going on. Maybe I will make a song out of it at some point. Who knows? But you have these options. But being that I'm not releasing this specific track professionally, I just want to button things up, tighten things up, make it sound a little bit better. I'll use one of the mastering presets on here that Studio One provides. I'm not trying to sell you on Studio One Pro. It's just the only DAW that I've used since like 2009. I'm sure every DAW has presets for mastering and that sort of thing. I just want to make the point that I'm not professionally releasing this track with a mastering plugin preset. And I'll talk more about that in a second, but I just want to share a couple of the presets that I use on a regular basis. It's either the clarity, the easy does it, or the smooth and clear. One note though, before you click on any of these presets for mastering, make sure that your main volume is down. I'll cut this down to like negative 5, 6 dB. Then insert the mastering plugin. If you were to leave the volume at 0 and then add the mastering on top of that, then that's probably going to make it clip. So I would lower that down substantially and then add the mastering plugin. You can gradually bring that main back up. Now there is a tool you can go in here and you can master it a different way. But again, this is just for ideas. This is just for, in my case, it's for YouTube. Now one quick thing to keep your files organized is to update the metadata. Now again, I'm in PreSonus Studio One. To do that, under Song, you can go to Song Setup, and here under Meta Information, you can see all of the data that you can input here. We can just put like metal tests for the song name. You can put your album. We'll just put, I don't know, Riffs album. We'll call the album Riffs. You can put the songwriter. I usually just copy and paste my own name for that, composer, arranger, and that sort of thing. The genre. You can even update the artwork. So that's something that you might want to consider during this setup process. If I were going to release something professional, here's what I do. Before I do that though, if you do not have my free complete metal guitar lesson guide called Metal Riffs and Licks, look, this has helped thousands of guitar players. Again, it's absolutely free. Grab a copy of that. There's a link in the description of this video. Now, if you have Metal Riffs and Licks and you've watched plenty of my YouTube videos and my style of teaching, it has helped you, then consider joining the Jason Stallworth Guitar Academy. Links for all this is in the description of this video. Do not be your own weakest link. Because if you think you can do everything, you're going to be your own weakest link somewhere in that process. So the number one thing I recommend, if you don't do anything else, I strongly recommend outsourcing the mastering process for your professional releases. I can say that a professional has mastered every album I've ever put out. I've got 5 albums out there now. I'm working on some other stuff, but I will always have someone else master my work because I know nothing about mastering. The other thing is I'm in a 10 by 11 room. This is not the environment to master. I'm not the person to be mastering anything. And even if you think that you're an expert at mastering, well, part of that process is to have an objective ear as well. So I always opt for having a professional master your work. This is, I believe, where I've become my own weakest link. I've mixed all of my albums up to this point. I am more than likely, like 98% sure, I'm going to have a professional who mixes on a regular basis. And that's what I mean by professional, guys. I don't mean somebody that, you know, like, hey, mix my album. No, I want someone that does this on a regular basis to mix my work. Now, another thing I like to do, and I'll share the part that I wish I did differently, is the past 2 albums I have hired a real drummer. So Cameron Fleury, you guys probably know him. He has a YouTube channel. He's a phenomenal metal drummer. He is a beast. But he also has his own professional recording setup in studio and mics and all of that to professionally not only perform the drums, because he's a pro, but also to record them as well. And I've even paid him extra to even mix the drums after the fact. So I think that's an important piece if you want your music to sound good, if you want it to be of high quality. My last 2 albums, especially Overcometh, my most recent, the drums, my album was here. When Cameron put drums on it, it went to here, in my opinion. I don't feel like the album would have been near as good, near as quality without his professional drums. Had I tried to program drums or get somebody that just kind of dabbles in drums, that maybe they're good, but they don't have the appropriate gear to record them to get a quality sound. So all these things I want you to take in consideration. Now, on that note of drums, I did record 2 albums using a drum program. I wish I had done that differently. If I could go back in time, I would change that. It was my heavy metal workout series, which really was just an instrumental metal, very specific to working out. I wanted to create some workout music that was just solid metal music, some riffs, you know. I played the bass, I played the guitars, all that good stuff, played the leads, mixed it, but I did use a drum program. I think I actually used Easy Drummer for that. Now, heavy metal workout 2, I reached out to Ed Aborn of Siren, who's a really good friend of mine, phenomenal drummer as well. And he didn't have the bandwidth at the time to actually play the drums for my album, but he said, I can program them for you, so at least you have the program from a drummer's perspective. So just sharing a little bit of insight on my process and how I have evolved musically over the years as well. Now, going back to my very first album, I actually used drum loops that were recorded in a real studio, Beta Monkey's Double Bass Mania. Again, if I could go back and do those over again, I would have hired a real drummer for all of those albums. There may have only been 1 heavy metal workout instead of 1 and 2 because, you know, it's costly to do these things, but I would have been okay with that. But again, in 2019, when I recorded Masterpiece, Peace is spelled P-E-A-C, by the way, and then 2023, I released Overcometh. Those had a real drummer, Cameron Fleury. I know I'm harping on this, guys, but I just, you know, if you're looking to put something out there, I just want it to be your best. I want it to be something you're proud of. I'm not preaching to you. I'm not really trying to tell you what to do, what you should or shouldn't do. You know, do what you want at the end of the day, but I would like for you to be just ultra proud of what you put out there. And look, if you kind of went my route in the beginning, you put some stuff out there, I'm like, man, okay, all right, just learn from your mistakes. You know, learn from that process. Like, okay, well, I'm going to do things better this time. So I just want to throw that encouragement out there to you. All right, I hope this helped you. I know a lot of you listening, maybe you're not even concerned about putting anything out there like a single or album, and that's okay too. This video wasn't really intended to have this lengthy end part on pro releases or anything like that, but I just wanted to share because if you're still watching this, well, that might be something you're interested in, and I can share more details about that in the future if you guys would like more info on that. In any case, guys, thank you so much for watching the video. Let me know if you have any questions. As always, keep it metal and keep playing music.